The recent storm in the U.S. visa sector has likely flooded many people's social feeds. This move has truly caught everyone off guard. The U.S. government suddenly announced a complete suspension of immigrant visa applications for 75 countries. Effective January 21st. The list of affected countries sparked immediate online debate. Familiar nations like Russia, Brazil, and Thailand made the cut, while NATO members North Macedonia and Montenegro weren't spared. Even Kosovo, long supported by the West, was included in the suspension. Yet surprisingly, Vietnam and Argentina secured exemptions. More notably, China is notably absent from this suspension list. What strategic calculations or undisclosed factors lie behind this seemingly arbitrary move? First, we must clarify a crucial point that is easily misunderstood. Do not be misled by sensationalist headlines online claiming the US has suspended all visas. The US government has only halted the processing of immigrant visa applications. Short-term travel visas such as student visas, business visas, and tourist visas remain unaffected and can still be submitted, reviewed, and issued through normal procedures. Moreover, the list of 75 countries circulating online is incomplete and only partially disclosed. US officials have explicitly stated that this suspension of immigrant visas is indefinite. The specific restart date will be announced after the new application assessment system is fully developed and operational. Regarding this new application assessment system, its rigor is unprecedented, representing a comprehensive, multidimensional screening with no blind spots for applicants. Previously, U.S. immigrant visa reviews primarily focused on basic factors like clean backgrounds and absence of criminal records. Under the new policy, however, the scope of scrutiny has expanded significantly. Detailed health checks are now required, including screening for chronic conditions like hypertension or diabetes, and assessing any health risks that could impact work or daily life. Applicants' age groups will be evaluated to determine if they fall within the prime working years capable of contributing value to U.S. society. Language proficiency is now a core requirement, demanding proof of fluency in English or another widely used language to ensure swift integration into American society. Financial capability review is paramount, requiring substantial proof of funds to demonstrate the ability to cover living expenses in the U.S. and avoid becoming a burden reliant on public benefits. Furthermore, the U.S. government will trace applicants' past welfare usage records to thoroughly investigate any history of exploiting or abusing public assistance. Ultimately, the core objective of this new U.S. policy is crystal clear: to completely bar applicants who lack the capacity to contribute value to American society and are highly likely to rely on U.S. public benefits for survival. The U.S. seeks to attract not those who come to share the social resources pie, but those who can continuously add to the pie and bring new growth. The entire screening criteria are set to the maximum, leaving almost no room for ambiguity. The introduction of this significant policy is no coincidence, driven by two core factors. The second factor, in particular, involves an incident that has completely redefined public perception of public welfare fraud, its audacity beyond belief. The first core factor was anticipated by those familiar with the U.S. political landscape, as it represents a continuation of the conservative immigration policies consistently upheld by the Trump administration. Since taking office, Trump has consistently and unambiguously opposed the influx of low-quality immigrants into the United States. In his view, U.S. immigration policy should prioritize talented individuals who can drive national economic growth, technological advancement, and social prosperity, not serve as a safe haven for those lacking skills or resources who merely seek to exploit public welfare and consume societal resources. Therefore, this large-scale tightening of immigration visa policies essentially represents the concentrated implementation of his long-standing approach to immigration governance. Compared to previous measures, however, this policy has a broader scope and stronger enforcement. The second core driver and the direct catalyst that spurred the U.S. government to decisively crack down was a shocking Somali immigrant welfare fraud scandal that rocked the nation. This case stands as the largest and most egregious welfare fraud in U.S. history, its audacity and scale leaving observers stunned. The scandal unfolded in Minnesota, home to a large Somali immigrant community. These immigrants and their descendants colluded to build a tightly organized, specialized fraud network, treating the federal public welfare system as an ATM they could withdraw from at will. Their methods were brutally simple yet highly concealed. They exploited regulatory loopholes in public welfare programs by fabricating massive amounts of false service records. For instance, they fabricated records for school nutrition programs, inflating the number of children served from under 100 to thousands. They forged credentials and service logs for non-existent childcare facilities to fraudulently obtain government subsidies. Worse still, they concocted fake medical diagnoses and treatment receipts, using fabricated cases to siphon off healthcare benefits. Through such fraudulent schemes, they amassed staggering sums across 14 distinct federal welfare programs, ultimately swindling nearly $9 billion in public funds. This figure equals the annual fiscal revenue of a medium-sized U.S. city, representing an egregious waste of public resources and profoundly damaging societal impact. Here are some mind-boggling details from the cases. A tiny restaurant in Minnesota, with a total floor area of less than 100 square meters and only 35 dining seats, theoretically accommodating no more than 35 diners, at a time submitted outrageously false claims to the government. It claimed to provide nutritious lunches for 18,000 children daily. Using this riddled with flaws report, the restaurant defrauded the federal government out of $12 million in welfare subsidies in just over a month. Consider this. Feeding 18,000 children would require massive manpower and resources even for large catering companies, utterly impossible for a 35-seat eatery. This blatantly treated government oversight as a mere formality. An even more staggering case involved a group of Somali American suspects who fabricated 230 entirely fictitious, disadvantaged group identities. These so-called beneficiaries had no real-world existence whatsoever. They were pure fabrications, using the pretext of providing housing assistance to these disadvantaged individuals. They applied for government housing subsidies, successfully defrauding at least $3.5 million in public funds through this scheme alone. After this fraud scandal came to light, police investigations revealed 92 individuals involved, 82 of whom were Somali immigrants. Many had already obtained U.S. citizenship or permanent residency green cards through the immigration process. Despite being integrated into American society, they recklessly chose to defraud their own government and appropriate public resources. Ironically, state authorities had detected irregularities as early as 2019. Welfare application reviewers noticed glaring anomalies across multiple regions. One area with only thousands of children showed tens of thousands of child benefit claims, while some applicants submitted obviously forged eligibility documents. Staff immediately reported these findings to superiors and proposed a comprehensive investigation. However, this investigation plan ultimately fizzled out and never truly progressed. As the case later came to light, the underlying reasons emerged. The state government's reluctance to pursue a thorough investigation stemmed primarily from two major concerns. The first concern was the fear of crossing the sensitive red line of racial discrimination. Within the American social context, racial issues remain an absolute taboo. Any action potentially interpreted as targeting a specific race is highly likely to trigger large-scale public protests. Launching a targeted investigation into Somali immigrants would inevitably provoke counterattacks from those implicated and their supporters, who would brand it racial discrimination. This would not only obstruct the investigation but also expose government officials to the risk of losing their positions, facing public condemnation, and even political backlash. The second concern delves into America's deep-seated political undercurrents. At the time, certain Democratic figures and Democratic-controlled local governments were well aware of welfare fraud committed by Somali immigrants. Yet they deliberately turned a blind eye. The core reason was a vote-for-benefits arrangement. While these immigrants defrauded public welfare programs, they held valuable voting power. Democrats tacitly permitted their fraudulent activities in exchange for these immigrants' unwavering electoral support against Republicans. This practice of paving political paths with taxpayers' hard-earned money is utterly depraved, severely undermining American democracy and the public interest. No wonder the Trump administration resolved to overhaul immigration visa policies with sweeping reforms. On one hand, The hard-earned money of American taxpayers is being fraudulently siphoned off by criminals, severely undermining the public welfare system. On the other hand, political opponents are exploiting these illegal activities to win votes and consolidate their political standing. For the Trump administration, this represents a double provocation. No responsible government could stand idly by, making the introduction of this new policy inevitable. However, as soon as this policy took effect, domestic controversy in the United States instantly intensified. Numerous groups opposed to Trump have come forward to criticize the policy, arguing that it fundamentally reflects a preference for the wealthy over the poor. They point out that while Trump vigorously promotes the so-called green card lottery program to attract wealthy immigrants from around the world, he simultaneously sets such stringent evaluation standards that low-income groups and ordinary workers are barred from entering the country. This approach fundamentally contradicts fair and equitable immigration principles, artificially creating class divisions that violate America's long-held values of inclusivity, diversity, and equal opportunity. Some critics also worry that the new assessment criteria could evolve into disguised discriminatory provisions. For instance, the policy explicitly includes health status as a core review factor. Does this mean applicants with chronic conditions like hypertension, diabetes, or obesity will be automatically denied? Such chronic illnesses are more prevalent among low-income groups, who already struggle to meet financial requirements. Adding health barriers effectively strips them of any chance to immigrate to the U.S. Critics contend that while the Trump administration's policy appears aimed at combating welfare fraud, it systematically excludes low-income groups, exacerbating social inequality. But honestly, I personally fully support this move by the Trump administration. The reasoning is actually quite straightforward. Any nation opening its immigration doors must do so with the intent of attracting talented individuals who can drive national development and create value, not to welcome fraudsters seeking to exploit public benefits or even engage in criminal activities. American wealth doesn't materialize out of thin air. It's accumulated through the hard work and quiet dedication of countless taxpayers. Why should those incapable of creating value who merely exploit loopholes and squander public resources be allowed to reap the rewards? Take this Somali immigrant welfare fraud case as an example. $9 billion in public funds were defrauded by criminals. These funds could have been used to improve American educational resources, upgrade medical facilities, and repair infrastructure, truly helping those U.S. citizens who genuinely need assistance. Instead, the money ended up in the pockets of fraudsters. This is undoubtedly a grave injustice to Americans who diligently pay taxes and abide by societal rules. Therefore, the Trump administration's tightening of immigration visa policies by rigorously screening out applicants who may become public burdens fundamentally safeguards America's public interest and protects taxpayers' legitimate rights. There is nothing improper about this. Moreover, I believe China could fully adopt this precise selection approach in its immigration and visa management. To immigrate to China, applicants must at least possess relevant professional skills or have family members capable of making positive contributions to China's economic development, technological progress, or cultural exchange. If an individual lacks specialized expertise, refuses to work diligently, or even intends to engage in activities that threaten public safety or disrupt social order in China, why should they be granted immigration status? Beyond immigration, even short-term visas should undergo stricter scrutiny to fortify the defenses of national security and societal interests. For instance, many international students from Central Asia, India, Africa, and other regions come to China. Undeniably, many are outstanding talents with excellent academic and moral qualities. They study diligently, engage actively in exchanges, and make positive contributions to Sino-foreign cultural exchanges and technological cooperation. However, there are also applicants of questionable character. Upon arrival, some exploit their foreign national status to flout Chinese laws and regulations, even engaging in activities that disrupt social order and harm public interests. For such individuals, we must strengthen vetting procedures, rigorously scrutinize their backgrounds, qualifications, and conduct, and prevent their easy entry into China. Consider India's approach. They impose clear financial requirements on Chinese tourists, students, and business applicants, mandating a minimum deposit of 100,000 RMB before issuing visas. If India can impose such requirements on us, China is fully justified in adopting reciprocal measures. For applicants from India, whether for study, tourism, or business visits, we should likewise demand equivalent proof of funds. This would demonstrate their ability to cover living expenses during their stay in China, preventing them from becoming a public burden to our nation. This is true reciprocity. We cannot allow others to impose demands while remaining defenseless ourselves. We must establish corresponding safeguards to protect the legitimate rights and interests of our nation and citizens. At this point, I wish to offer some heartfelt advice to those fixated on emigrating to the United States. Abandon unrealistic fantasies that changing countries will fundamentally alter your destiny. Take a moment to reflect. China's social safety net is already remarkably robust. Even without exceptional talents or specialized skills, anyone willing to work diligently and earnestly can find employment sufficient to support their family. You will never be left destitute or homeless. I have many real-life examples around me. A young friend of mine, fresh out of college, didn't want to be tied down by a full-time job right away. He wanted to find a part-time gig to experience life and earn some pocket money on the side. He submitted a few resumes on a job platform the night before last. By the next morning, he had already received an interview invitation. After briefly discussing the job responsibilities and compensation with the employer, he finalized the hiring details that same day and officially started today. He's doing a part-time role related to new media operations, working a few hours daily. The pay is quite decent, fully covering his daily living expenses while allowing him to save some money for travel and learning. Then there's Auntie Wang, who lives downstairs from me. She's 52 now, with limited education, and used to farm back in her hometown. Last year, she moved to the city with her son. At first she was really anxious, worried that her age and lack of skills would make it hard to find work. But unexpectedly, a chain supermarket near our neighborhood was hiring cleaning staff. She went for an interview on a whim, and the manager saw she was reliable and hardworking, so she got hired on the spot. Now Aunt Wang works 6 hours daily. The job isn't strenuous, and her stable income covers her daily expenses while allowing her to occasionally buy gifts for her grandchildren back home. She lives a fulfilling and contented life. This is the reality in China today. As long as you're willing to work hard and stay grounded, regardless of your age or background, you can always find a suitable position. You will never be left with nowhere to turn. Yet some people stubbornly believe their struggles in China stem from lack of opportunity, shifting all blame onto society or the state. They fixate on emigrating to America, naively expecting instant success and a life turnaround once they arrive. But is that really the case? I've seen too many counterexamples. Some individuals were lazy and unrealistic back home, unwilling to work diligently, always seeking shortcuts and quick money, ultimately achieving nothing. 他们然后把失败归咎于中国缺乏机会，毅然决然地放弃国内的一切，花费巨资，动用关系，移民美国。Yet upon arrival, language barriers become the greatest obstacle. Inability to communicate effectively makes finding suitable work nearly impossible. Cultural clashes prevent integration into local society, leaving them friendless and without connections, isolated and alone. Compounded by a lack of specialized skills, they are ultimately forced into menial manual labor, earning meager wages while living in squalid slums. Worse still, unable to adapt to the American pace of life and social norms. Some end up as homeless individuals, struggling even to meet basic needs. They survive on welfare handouts, their once lofty ambitions long since shattered. Think carefully. If you can't succeed in China, a place with familiar culture, shared language, and strong community bonds, what makes you think you'll thrive in America? A completely foreign land where you lack connections, language advantages, or professional skills. Opportunities in America are abundant, but they're reserved for those who are prepared, capable, and willing to work hard, not for those seeking shortcuts or free rides. Are there few homeless people on American streets? Many of them arrived here embracing the American dream, only to end up on the streets for various reasons. Therefore, if someone is a failure in their home country, they are likely to remain a failure in America. The root of the problem has never been the quality of the country, but rather the individual's attitude and capabilities. If you refuse to work diligently, neglect self-improvement, constantly blame your circumstances, and shirk responsibility, then no matter how many countries or environments you change, you will never achieve success. Instead of blindly envying others' lives or complaining about your own situation, it's better to calmly reflect on your own shortcomings and diligently focus on doing every task at hand well. This is the only correct path to changing your destiny. Another particularly noteworthy phenomenon, in recent years, global population mobility has shown a distinct two-way trend. On one hand, an increasing number of Chinese scientists and high-end technical talents working and living in the United States are choosing to abandon generous overseas benefits and return to China for development. Many of them have already achieved remarkable success abroad, enjoying stable jobs, substantial salaries, and superior living conditions, yet they resolutely choose to return to the embrace of their motherland. I know a Chinese scientist who previously conducted AI research at a top US university, earning a six-figure annual salary while leading his own research team and laboratory. Yet last year, he chose to return to China and join a renowned domestic research institution. When I asked him why he made this choice, he explained, "The research environment in China is improving significantly. Government funding for scientific research is increasingly robust, and the vast domestic market offers more application scenarios for translating my research into practical solutions. More importantly, as a Chinese person, being able to contribute to my homeland gives me a profound sense of accomplishment and belonging." Many other Chinese talents like him have returned, injecting powerful momentum into China's technological development while accelerating the rapid advancement of related industries. On the other hand, some Chinese citizens persist in holding unrealistic illusions about the United States, fixated on the idea of emigrating there. Some obtain short-term US visas through various channels and then attempt to overstay, seeking residency through illegal means. Others deplete family savings or even resort to high-interest loans to secure US immigrant visas through agencies, only to be scammed or face starkly different realities upon arrival, leaving them filled with regret. Frankly, I believe this two-way migration trend is actually a positive development. The Trump administration's policy tightening to block immigrants who merely seek welfare benefits without contributing value isn't necessarily bad for us. As for those dissatisfied with China who are single-mindedly focused on escaping to America if they truly believe the moon is rounder and the air sweeter there, let them go. Some netizens even joked that the Chinese government could reimburse their airfare as long as they never return. While this is just a joke, it reflects a common sentiment: different strokes for different folks. If you don't agree with China's development model or dislike its social environment, there's no need to force yourself to stay. Parting ways peacefully is actually the best choice. The U.S. immigration visa suspension policy essentially represents a targeted selection revolution, targeting immigrant groups. Its core logic is survival of the fittest, retaining those who can create value and drive American progress while blocking those who merely seek to exploit public welfare and disrupt social order. This is a legitimate right possessed by every sovereign nation. Any country has the authority to formulate immigration policies aligned with its developmental needs and select immigrant groups that serve its national interests. This is entirely justified. For us, whether evaluating the US's new policy or reflecting on China's immigration and visa management, the core should revolve around two key concepts: fairness and value reciprocity. When a nation provides you with a platform for growth, livelihood security, and opportunities to realize your potential, you should reciprocate by contributing to its development through your own efforts and dedication. This constitutes a healthy, mutually beneficial relationship. If you seek only to enjoy the rights and benefits offered by a country without fulfilling your obligations or contributing to its progress, you will never be truly accepted or respected no matter which nation you choose to settle in. Finally, I'd like to ask everyone watching, what are your thoughts on the new visa policy recently introduced by the United States? Do you support the Trump administration's approach? Do you believe China should draw lessons from the US experience and further tighten visa and immigration screening? Feel free to share your genuine thoughts and perspectives in the comments section. Let's discuss together. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I'll continue tracking policy developments worldwide, bringing you more in-depth analysis and exclusive insights. See you next time.